Okay, so today I was just going to talk about something. I was talking with a friend over the past week, and anyway, we were just talking, catching up, and just asking how life. We're talking about life, how life is going, and so me, I'm going to go there with you if I love you, right? And so I was like, well, man, how have you been? How's your time, with God been going? And he's like, man, I really haven't been. I said, I've been getting in your word, and he's like, no, not really, man. I've just been so busy with work and school, I just don't have time to do it right now. And I was like, man, I understand. And so I shared him this analogy. I'm sharing it with you guys. It's about these log cutters, right? And there were two guys that were competing. They're really well known in their cities for being amazing log cutters, and everybody said this guy's the best. Some people said this guy's the best. So, well, let's find out. So they had a friendly competition, and it was like a 6-hour deal. And so they all got out there, went to opposite sides, kind of the forest, and they were chopping away at logs. And we'll just call one guy Simon, call the other guy Peter. So Simon's chopping away at the logs, and they're going for about a good hour and a half. And all of a sudden he hears that Peter's not chopping anymore. So he's like, oh yeah, I'm going to get him. So he's going even harder, right? And he keeps chopping and chopping and keep going at it. He's like, then about 15 minutes later, he hears him start back up again. So they keep chopping, chopping away. Another hour and a half passed by, and you notice that Peter again stops. So he's like, man, I'm really tired, but it just gave him the fuel. Like, every minute he stops, I'm going to go even harder. And so this went on, and so he kept stopping every, hour and a half for about 20, 30 minutes. And when it ended, he just was so confident, man, I just smoked him because I know I got a good hour more than he did of just getting at this wood. And so when the results came in, he lost, and he was shocked. And so he was like, man, how is this that you beat me? He said, I heard you stop for 15 minutes and you're resting. He goes, man, I wasn't resting. I was sharpening the axe. Mm-hmm. And so what I told my buddy is you know what? Sometimes in life, and you'll find this, I heard this pastor say this one time. He's famous. I wish I could remember his name. But anyway, he's pretty well known. But he said, the times where I have more on my schedule and I'm the busiest, that's the time that I spend an extra 30 minutes in prayer. Because we need that insight and wisdom from God to handle a more hectic schedule. So we have to take time and spend time and get away to a quiet place and spend time with God. The more busy it is, the more we need that. And in Mark chapter 6, you can check it out, chapter 30, it talks about Jesus with the disciples, and many people are coming and going, and it's very busy. So much so, it says they didn't even have the leisure to eat. That's how busy they were. They didn't even have time to eat. And so they said, well, hey, let's go to a quiet place. And every time Jesus goes to a quiet place, he goes to a quiet place to pray and spend time with God. He's our example. If Jesus had to get in a quiet place and spend time with God in the flesh, how much more do we need to get away? And so they go, and when they go, they're met by crowds from all over the surrounding towns, recognize, they see who it is, they rush over there. So they rush to go to a quiet place to this mountainside, and there are tons of people. But Jesus, having a compassionate heart, he couldn't send them away. He began to teach, and the disciples were like, send them away, because we're in this desolate place. They need to go into neighboring towns and get something to eat. And that's where you hear the story about the 5,000, right? But rarely do we hear about, what they were going to do. So he goes, he teaches, and he preaches and everything, and he feeds the 5,000 all there, and he's exhausted and tired. And then he sends his disciples away in a boat. He goes away to pray. When he was most exhausted, most busy, it's even more important to take that time to get away and get quiet and pray. And it's important for us to spend that quiet time with God. When we feel like things are hectic, or we feel like, oh, I'm too busy to pray, you need to pray even more, and so find that time, and spend that time with God. It's just kind of like we give God the first and the best. The Bible talks about first fruits. We give him the first, the best of our time, the first and the best of our money, the first, the best of everything, and he makes what's left over go so much further. If you spend your first time with God and you only got 5 hours, you spend that first, 45 minutes with the Lord, you're going to be so much more productive in those other 4 hours and 15 minutes. God will give you insight. And we got time. I'm going to tell you one more story, and then we'll go. Just a thing about spending time and praying and being quiet and listening to God. Okay, and this is a story on my fault, so you'll get something out of it. But anyway, I remember this was when I was younger. I was singing in the choir at my church, and I didn't have a whole lot of time, but I was rushing to get to the church because I knew I was in a hurry. But I felt like God was talking to me, and he said, no, don't go this way, go that way. And I was like, well, God, is this you or is this me? And I was like, well, I don't have time to sit and find out, and pray and find out. I'm in a hurry. I got to go. So I just went. And I went the way that I knew was generally the fastest when God was telling me to go the other direction. And boom, I had a funeral procession that was so long. And I couldn't stop and turn around because that would have been rude and wrong, or anything like that. I just had to sit and wait. And I was like, okay, God, I need to listen. Sometimes we need to stop and be quiet, and we need to listen. And if we feel like God's talking to us, you're far better off stopping and just taking a little bit of time and hearing Him. And that would have saved me, a good 15 minutes. Anyway, that's all I got. Heavenly Father, we love